And we walked about a block to the old Brown building. Now, the Brown building is an office building in downtown Wichita, and it's 8 stories high. But back in 1950, in the 50s and 60s, it had an elevator that was operated by a man, an elevator operator. Daddy took us to the Brown building, and we stood in front of the elevator, and the doors were covered in some sort of brass material. It was reflective. We could see ourselves in the elevator doors.
Yeah.
And Dad pushed a button that said up, and the button lit up white.
Because Daddy let one of us push the button.
So anyway, we pushed the button, and we could hear a motor running. We hadn't seen an elevator before, but we heard the motor running, and all of a sudden, those brass doors opened like that, and inside was a wire cage as big as a room, and there was a man inside. And he took his hand and grabbed that cage and slid that wire door open, and he said, "Welcome aboard. Come on inside." So we went inside. We were fascinated.
Oh, yeah.
And so then when we were all inside, he slid that wire cage closed, and he took it was like a steering wheel, only it was gold color and had a funny handle on it. And he slid that to the right, and the big doors closed, and we were inside this room with this man. And this man had on a uniform. And I remember it was black. It was like a suit. And it was black, and he had on a hat and had a bill on the front of it, and it was kind of peaked, and there were gold braiding on the hat, and he said, "My name is Keith." And Daddy said, "Hello, Keith. This is my family, and we're going to the circus at the Roundhouse this afternoon, but we'd like to go to the 8th floor of your building and get out and look down on Douglas Street. Could we do that?" And the man said, "Sure." So he twisted the steering wheel a little bit, and we began to rise, all of us, in this room. And I was kind of scared. So we went up to the 8th floor, and he stopped, and he opened the wire door, and then he turned the handle a little bit more, and the doors of the elevator opened, and there was this hallway with doors on either side. We got out, and we went to the windows. And Keith said, "Sir, just take your time, and when you're ready, just call me, and I'll come back up after you." So he slid the wire gate closed the doors, and we heard the motor, but he was gone, and we were there on the 8th floor all by ourselves.
Left us, huh?
And so we went up to the big windows of that building, and we looked down on Douglas, and we could see the cars, and they were teeny, tiny, going by. And we spent, I don't know, some time up there, and Daddy told us some stories. I don't remember what he told us, but he had ridden a bike when he was right out of high school and delivered telegrams. So I'm sure that was probably one of the stories, but he'd say, "That's Douglas, and that's Broadway, and Uncle Lee lived over here," and whatever he told us while we were up there. We were up there for a little while, and then it was time to go. So we walked back over to the elevator, and another one of us got to push the button, but this time it said down on it. We heard the motor running, and all of a sudden the brass doors opened, and there was the gate. There was the operator, Keith, and he opened the door, and he said, "Are you ready to go?" And Daddy said, "Yes, thank you." So we all walked into the elevator. He closed the gate. He closed the doors. He moved the handle, and we started down. I know I was scared again, and I remember Tommy grabbed my hand, and when we got to the bottom, Tommy said, "That tickled my stomach."
Yeah.
And so Operator Keith let us out of the elevator, and that was the first experience I ever had with an elevator, not to mention an elevator operator. And then when we got back in the car, I remember Daddy telling us, he turned around and he said, "I got to tell you something sad." I And what, Daddy, what? We were afraid he's going to tell us we couldn't go to the circus.
Oh.
That's what I was afraid of. Wasn't it? Daddy said, I have to tell you that Keith is losing his job. Well, we'd fallen in love with Keith on that elevator ride. And so, oh no, why? And Daddy said, without cracking a smile, Daddy said, well, he can't remember his route.
It took me a while to get that, but yeah.
Daddy was, well, it did us too. Finally, we got it and laughed at him. Daddy was a jokester.
As if it was not up and down.
That
Yeah.
was part of the fun with Dad.
Oh, yeah.
He was always teasing about something or telling some goofy story.
Yeah.
And of course, as we got older, we'd hear the same story sometimes. We'd go, oh, Dad.